It was a cold and rainy night on a lonely highway. The Iron Vulture's biker bar stood at the end of the road, glowing dimly under the flickering neon lights. Inside, rough men in leather jackets laughed, smoked, and drank. The music was loud, the air smelled of beer and gasoline, and no one expected any surprises that night. Then suddenly, the door creaked open. A woman stepped inside. She was drenched in rain, her hair clinging to her face, her clothes dirty and torn. The whole bar went silent. Every biker turned to look. Even the jukebox stopped playing as if the night itself froze. She stood there, breathing heavily. Her face showed fear, pain, and exhaustion. But the thing that shocked everyone, she was pregnant. Very pregnant. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Please, I need help." The biggest biker in the room, a man called Bear, stood up slowly. He was tall and broad, with tattoos on both arms and a thick beard covering half his face. His dark eyes studied the woman carefully. "Lady," he said in a deep voice, "you sure you know where you are?" The woman looked terrified. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then Bear sighed and said, "All right, sit down." He pulled out a chair, and she sank into it weakly. The bartender, an older biker everyone called Doc, brought her a towel and a steaming cup of coffee. "You look like you've been through hell," Doc said softly. "What happened?" The woman's hands trembled as she held the cup. "My name is Lena," she said in a broken voice. "My husband. He's dead." The bikers exchanged glances. No one laughed now. Bear leaned closer. "How did that happen?" She hesitated, staring at the cup in her hands. "He worked for some dangerous people. A gang called the Razorbacks. He found out something they didn't want him to know. Something bad. When he tried to leave, they killed him. And now they're after me." The room grew tense. The Razorbacks were known to the Iron Vultures, rivals, enemies, troublemakers. Bear clenched his jaw. "You're telling me Razorbacks are hunting a pregnant woman?" Lena nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "They think I have something my husband stole. But I don't. I just want to protect my baby." Bear turned to his men. "Lock the doors." The bikers immediately got up, shutting every door and window. The bar that had been filled with laughter moments ago now felt like a bunker, a place ready for war. Doc looked at Bear uneasily. "You sure about this, brother? If the Razorbacks find out we're hiding her, it'll start a blood war." Bear's face hardened. "Let it. No man hurts a woman under my roof." Lena looked at him, shocked. "You don't even know me. Why would you risk so much?" Bear poured himself a glass of whiskey. "Because someone has to do the right thing once in a while." Doc gave her a small smile. "You'll be safe here, sweetheart. No one's getting through that door." Hours passed. The rain kept falling. Most of the bikers stayed awake, guarding the doors and watching the road. Lena sat in a corner booth, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes half closed. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Doc brought her soup and some bread. She thanked him quietly. Bear walked over and sat across from her. "You from around here?" Lena shook her head. "No, my husband and I live 2 towns over. When he died, I ran. I didn't know where to go, so I just drove. When my car ran out of gas, I saw your sign. Guess fate brought you to us," Bear said. Lena gave a small smile. "Maybe." She hesitated, then whispered, "Do you think they'll find me?" Bear looked toward the door. "They'll try, but we'll be ready." As the night went on, thunder rolled across the sky. Around midnight, the sound of engines echoed in the distance. One of the bikers at the window cursed under his breath. "We got company." Bear stood up instantly. "How many?" "3 trucks," the man replied. "And they ain't friendly." Lena's heart began to race. "It's them," she whispered, clutching her stomach. "The Razorbacks." Bear loaded his shotgun. "Then it's time to send them a message." Outside, the truck stopped in front of the bar. 10 men stepped out, all armed and wearing Razorback jackets. Their leader, a tall man with a scar running across his face, shouted through the rain, "We know she's in there. Hand her over, and we'll leave your place standing." Bear opened the bar door and stepped outside into the rain. He stood tall, his shotgun resting on his shoulder. "You boys got the wrong place," he said calmly. The scarred man laughed. "Don't play dumb, Bear. We tracked her car. Give her to us and no one gets hurt." Bear smirked. "You must be new here. We don't hand over women to cowards. The man's smile disappeared. Then you're all dead men. A single gunshot rang out. A bullet shattered the neon sign above the door. The fight began. The bikers returned fire. Bullets hit the walls and windows. Sparks flew as metal clashed and glass shattered. The quiet highway turned into a war zone. Lena screamed and ducked behind the counter while Doc ran over, shielding her with his body. "Stay down," he shouted. "Don't move!" Outside, Bear charged forward, tackling the scarred man into the mud. The two fought brutally, fists, knees, and blood flying in the rain. "Where's the woman?" the man growled. Bear's fist smashed into his jaw. "Not your problem?" The man pulled a knife, but Bear was faster. He twisted the man's arm and slammed him face first into the ground, knocking him out cold. When the other Razorbacks saw their leader fall, they panicked and jumped back into their trucks, speeding off into the storm. Silence filled the night again, except for the rain. Bear walked back into the bar, soaked and breathing heavily. His cheek was bleeding, but he smiled. "They're gone. For now." Lena looked up from behind the counter, her eyes wide. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. "Nothing serious." She began to cry softly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring danger here." Bear knelt beside her and said gently, "You didn't bring danger. You brought purpose." The other bikers nodded. For the first time in years, they weren't fighting for territory, money, or ego. They were fighting for something good, for someone innocent. Doc began patching up a few wounded men while the others cleaned up the mess. Lena sat quietly, holding her belly, whispering a prayer. As dawn began to break, the rain finally stopped. The first rays of sunlight slipped through the cracks of the wooden walls. Lena stood near the window, staring out at the rising sun. "My husband always said there were still good people in this world," she said softly. "I think he was right." Bear poured himself another drink and smiled faintly. "Then he must have been a smart man." She turned to him. "Thank you." "For everything," he nodded. "Don't thank me yet." "Something tells me this ain't over." And he was right. Far down the highway, engines roared once again, louder this time. The Razorbacks were coming back, and this time they weren't coming alone. Bear cracked his knuckles, staring out the window with a cold smile. "Round two," he said. The morning sun barely touched the wet highway when the sound of engines began again, louder, heavier, closer. Bear stood at the window of the Iron Vulture's bar, his jaw tight. Outside, a dust cloud rose as nearly a dozen Razorback bikes and trucks came roaring down the road. Doc stepped beside him, loading his rifle. "They brought the whole nest this time." Bear nodded slowly. "Yeah, and they ain't leaving until one of us is buried." Lena, still sitting near the counter, felt her stomach twist. She stood up carefully, holding her belly. "You don't have to fight for me," she said, her voice trembling. "If I go to them, maybe they'll let you live." Bear turned sharply. "Don't you ever say that again." He looked her straight in the eyes. "You're under our protection now. No one lays a hand on you, or they deal with me first." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know who I am." Bear smiled faintly. "Because once someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. Maybe I'm just paying it forward." The engines stopped outside. The Razorbacks surrounded the bar. Their leader this time was a different man, tall, wearing sunglasses, and calm in a way that was more dangerous than anger. His name was Rex, the Razorbacks' new boss, and the older brother of the man Bear had beaten the night before. Rex called out, his voice echoing through the morning air. "Bear, you've got something that belongs to me. Hand over the woman, and I'll forget last night ever happened." Bear stepped outside, shotgun in hand. The bikers from his crew followed, weapons ready. "She's not yours," Bear said. "And she's not going anywhere," Rex smirked. "You always were a fool." "This isn't your fight." "Then make it mine," Bear replied coldly. Rex's smile faded. He raised his hand, and the sound of dozens of guns being cocked filled the air. The Razorbacks were ready for war. Inside the bar, Doc quickly moved Lena into a back room. "You need to stay low. No matter what happens, don't come out until I say so." Lena grabbed his sleeve. If they kill you, what happens to me? Doc smiled sadly. You'll still be breathing. That's enough for me. Outside, the first shot fired. Chaos exploded instantly. Bullets tore through wood and glass. The iron vultures fired back, taking cover behind their bikes and sandbags they'd set up near the door. The battle was fierce, loud and merciless. The air filled with the smell of gunpowder and the echo of roaring engines. Bear charged through the front door, firing his shotgun and shouting orders. 2 Razorbacks fell, but there were too many of them. For every man who fell, another took his place. Inside, Lena screamed as a bullet tore through the window near her. She crouched on the floor, covering her stomach, whispering prayers through tears. She thought of her husband, his face, his laughter, his promise that he'd keep her safe. And now these strangers were risking their lives to do the same. Suddenly, the door to the back room burst open. A Razorback had slipped inside through the side window. He aimed his pistol at her. "Game over, sweetheart," he sneered. Before he could fire, a loud bang echoed. The man froze and fell forward. Doc stood behind him, smoke rising from his revolver. "Not today, son," he muttered. He turned to Lena. "You okay?" She nodded shakily. "I think so." "Good," Doc said, reloading. "Stay behind me." Outside, Bear was running low on ammo. He ducked behind a broken table and cursed under his breath. "We can't hold this forever," Rex shouted from behind his truck. "I'll give you one last chance, Bear. Step aside and hand her over. That woman's carrying something that belongs to me." Bear frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" Rex grinned darkly. "Ask her what her husband stole before he died." Bear's mind raced. He turned toward the bar, shouting, "Lena! What did your husband take?" Her voice trembled from inside. "A hard drive. He found something about them. Proof they've been smuggling weapons and selling to mercenaries. He told me to keep it safe." Doc's eyes widened. "You have it with you?" Lena nodded. "In my bag." "They'll kill anyone who tries to protect me," Bear shouted back at Rex. "So that's it! You're killing a woman for a piece of tech?" Rex sneered. "That piece of tech could put me in prison for life." "Hand her over, or I'll burn this place down." Bear's face hardened. "You'll have to go through me." The fight raged for another 15 minutes. The bikers fought like wolves, outnumbered but fearless. But soon, ammo ran low and smoke filled the bar. Bear saw his men falling back, bleeding but still fighting. He knew it was now or never. He grabbed his last grenade, a relic from his army days, and looked at Doc. Doc grinned weakly. "You're crazy," Bear smirked. "Yeah, but it works." He ran out the front door, pulling the pin, and threw it straight into the Razorback's lead truck. The explosion lit up the morning sky, flipping the vehicle and sending shockwaves across the road. The rest of the Razorbacks scattered, some retreating, others too scared to continue the fight. When the smoke cleared, Rex was still standing, but barely. His face was covered in dust and blood. He aimed his pistol at Bear. You're dead, old man." Before he could fire, a gunshot echoed. Rex's weapon dropped from his hand. He turned and froze. Lena stood there holding Doc's revolver with shaking hands. Tears streamed down her face. "It's over," she said softly. Rex looked at her, stunned, then fell to the ground, defeated. Silence filled the air once more. The iron vultures, bruised, bloodied but alive, stood around, breathing heavily. The highway smelled of smoke and victory. Hours later, the police arrived. The surviving Razorbacks were taken away in handcuffs. Lena handed the hard drive to the sheriff, telling him everything her husband had discovered. The evidence was enough to shut down the Razorbacks for good. When the sheriff left, Lena turned to Bear and Doc. "I don't know how to thank you." Bear chuckled. "Don't try. Just promise you'll raise that kid to be stronger than all of us." Doc smiled. "And maybe name him after me," he joked. Lena laughed softly through her tears. "Deal." Before she left, she looked at Bear one last time. "You saved my life. You all did. I'll never forget that." Bear nodded. "Neither will we. You reminded us what we used to be. Good men." She drove away into the sunrise, free at last. Bear stood outside the bar, watching her car disappear down the highway. Doc joined him, lighting a cigarette. "Think she'll be all right?" Bear smiled faintly. Yeah, she's tougher than she looks. Doc blew out smoke. So what now? Bear looked at the wrecked bar and the bullet holes in the walls. Now, he smiled, we rebuild. The wind carried the scent of rain and ashes as the two men stood side by side, brothers who had just fought not for pride, but for something worth dying for. And somewhere far down that empty road, a woman carried not just a baby, but the memory of those who protected her when the whole world turned its back. For the first time in a long time, the Iron Vultures had done something good. And for Lena, that night in the biker bar would remain the moment her life and her child's future were saved forever.